Hello everyone and welcome to the second part of the Zelda Unknown episode about Hyrule Field. Last time we went deep into the peaceful and familiar elements of Hyrule Field. This time I'm joined by Zelda Conqueror to take a deeper perspective on its much darker and mysterious side as the site of the witness of Hyrule Field's most dirty secrets, the wars.
The Ancient War or Battle, the Interloper War, the War of the Bound Chest, the Civil War, the Imprisoning War, the Ikana War, the Gerudo Hylian War, the Twilight Invasion, the War in the Era of No Hero, and the Spirit War. Let us face it, the history of the legend is built on blood, greed, and hatred, and wars that led to massive waves of refugees, and even the downfall of entire races. Then why are the only true insights into this mature and forbidden world of extermination, mass slaughter, and destruction too intriguing and thought-provoking cutscenes within the console installments? Is it because of hardware restrictions, or the ESRB/PEGI? No matter what it is, Hyrule Warriors, despite its exaggerated combat mechanics, have left a desire and created demand for the inclusion of more large-scale battles in future Zelda games, since to this point, these have always been limited to minor skirmishes. The most prominent of these was a horseback duel in Twilight Princess against King Boblin and his Boblikin fellows, but apart from a few scarce examples, nothing.
Absolutely. And what other game could do something about this lacking aspect than Zelda Wii U? Imagine this massive, peaceful field at some point in the game turning into a nightmare as the different tribes turn against each other, militarize, mobilize and prepare for a full-blown war, marking for the introduction of a conflict and a battle setting unparalleled to anything we have seen to this point in the series. As the game progresses, we could bear witness to events leading up to the outbreak of a given war and the tragedy that unfolds by being first-hand witnesses to the atrocities as one of many knights battling a way through Hyrule's battlefield.
Only that, unlike in Twilight Princess, this game mode should not be a part of the main quest to not hurt its non-linear nature, but rather a lengthy side quest stretching across the game that gives players a true impact on the surrounding world in the process. And you know what? This would actually be in accordance with series creator Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto's and series producer Mr. Eiji Oanuma's intention of Link representing the player, handing over important decisions of the game with its consequences over to the player in a war setting, could mark for a perfect example of how the legend could evolve in terms of story, gameplay, and player choice. And before you point out that the ESRB will make sure that this will never happen, I would like to point out that it has already been done before with Hyrule Warriors, and as long as the developers avoid including blood, at least the red one, wounded individuals, corpses, and other mature signs of suffering found in real-life wars, then there should be no problem.
But then you could ask yourself, what war could Zelda Wii U take place in? Based on what we have seen so far of the game, I would say that 6 conflicts are possible. The Interloper War, the War of the Bound Chest from the era of the Hero of Men, the Hyrulean Civil War, the Gerudo Hylian War, or a completely new, unknown to this point, war. All of these are wars that took place in Hyrule and involved the Hylians in some way or form. Let us begin with the Interloper War in the Era of Chaos. This war is the earliest referenced conflict in the timeline after the ancient battle. Calling it a proper war though is a little exaggeration, as it was a more massive battle fought over the control of the Sacred Realm and led to the expulsion of the Sheikah interlopers. A setting in these times would be interesting. However, Zelda Wii U will most likely not take place during this war, since the E3 reveal clearly showed Hyrule Castletown, which did not exist at this point in the timeline.
Next, we have the War of the Bound Chest. This conflict involved the Hero of Men who, with the help of the Tiny Minish, utilized the Picori Blade and the Light Force to seal the invading Shadow Beasts within the Bound Chest. The setting of this destructive war that brought the Kingdom of Hyrule to near ruin would fit Zelda Wii U well, and who knows, perhaps the game could take place at the turn from the Era of Prosperity to the Force Era. It would as well fit the setting of the game, as Hyrule Historia references that Hyrule Castle and the Temple of Time were already built at this point in the timeline. On top of this, there are several theories pointing at Zelda U Link being the Hero of Men, due to the similar long hair and light blue eyes. Apart from the War of the Bound Chest, this leaves us with the Hyrulean Civil War and the Gerudo Hylian War. In other words, the prospect of Hyrulean direct prequel or a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time. Both of these events had been barely referenced in the games in Hyrule Historia, but we know that the Hylians and Gerudo fought each other in both wars. The lengthy Hyrulean Civil War could mark for the setting of Zelda Wii U. At this point in the timeline, both Hyrule Castletown and Lon Lon Ranch were already constructed, which would make sense with the boundaries of Hyrule Field found in Zelda Wii U being similar to those in Ocarina of Time. In other words, Zelda U could take stage in the wake of the Civil War, as the field is still inhabited and full of life. If this will be the case, then we will likely have to take part in separate battles and witness, as Hyrule Field is reduced to a barren wasteland. But who would be the hero in this game?
Massive spoiler alert. It could turn out that Link in Zelda Wii U could be the hero of Chime's father who fell in battle during the Civil War. You can turn it how you will, but this setting will probably be the darkest in the series due to the great personal tragedies and the Sheikah genocide at the end of this war. Next, we have the greatest gap in the history of Hyrule, the time frame between Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. Both the similarity to the map in Twilight Princess, the Great Bridge of Hylia, and the fact that we have not seen any game in this dark and depressing branch since 2006 might point at Zelda Wii U being placed in this time frame. Or, and I know this suggestion is controversial, the game can take place in an unspecified point in time, as nothing in Zelda Wii U makes sense when analyzing from a timeline perspective. Thus we might be in for a new conflict in Hyrule, one we have never known about or been told about. The great benefit, if this is the case, is that the plot and motivations behind the war could be written from scratch and adjusted to the game's non-linear style, not vice versa.
How will combat function in Zelda Wii U? This is a question we all want to answer to, which will also be crucial as to how more extensive battles could function in an installment. From the E3 reveal and the Game Awards presentation, we know that advanced horseback combat is making a return in Zelda U, as Link will be able to fight with a wide arsenal of weaponry, such as a bow with an abundance of arrows, swords, and obviously shields. We as well know that the lock-on mechanic will make a return, and that a slow motion mechanic will be added when leaping from a horse, as presented during the GA presentation. This implies that we will most likely see a return of the well-functioning combat mechanics from past installments, mixed with some new ones. Personally, I believe it would be beneficial to implement a mixture of the fluid sword and shield combat system from Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, as these both were not only the best implemented in the Zelda series, but any game, period.
Just like in Wind Waker, to defeat certain creatures you should be required to have mastered several different sword techniques in order to target their weak points. You should be able to knock out your enemies' weapons, just to pick them up and use them against them. Another strength of Wind Waker that should be brought back in Zelda Wii U are the excellent parrying attack, where when confronted by several strong enemies, you could easily dodge their strikes by maneuvering yourself away and counterattacking them while they were exposed. At the same time, like in real life, the enemies should not wait in turn to attack you, but keep you on constant guard from several enemies moving towards you all at once.
Lastly, it would be beneficial that they implemented charging as an attack option to horseback combat in the game. Since this is one of the most important tactics in mountain attacks, please Nintendo do not limit horseback combat to aimlessly swinging your sword around or just locking onto your opponent, because that is one of the many reasons why people complain over an element in Twilight Princess that held so much potential.
Though other Zelda games such as Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask and Skyward Sword contain stealth gameplay sections, no one did it better than Wind Waker with its Forsaken Fortress. In this level, the Hero of the Winds had to take out the bokoblins, operating the searchlights with close to no weaponry and practice stealth in order to successfully navigate through the fortress by moving and hiding within barrels, the Zelda equivalent of a card box, in order to avoid being spotted by the patrolling moblins. Zelda Wii U should be no worse and includes several stealth sections across the game, as these make for some of the most memorable in the series. This applies to all areas, no matter whether they are mini dungeons such as the Deku Palace and the Gerudo Fortress, dungeons, enemy strongholds, trials such as the Silent Realms, or during infiltration behind enemy lines.
Link, they are asking for too much. Eliminate them if necessary.
As we arrive at what could become one of the greatest implementations and side quests in the game, full-scale battles in a lengthy multi-stage war.
If dungeons are not fitting in a place and location as Hyrule Field, and letting it become a true battlefield in Zelda U would mark for a different, but definitely interesting approach that could further build on the idea behind Hyrule Warriors, where you are just a knight or soldier in a giant battle. Let me illustrate how this side quest could function. At some point in the field, there would be a camp set up by the Hyrulean forces. Upon entering, you are escorted to the captain's tent. A short cutscene takes place where a knight explains to Link the situation. Imagine massive banners blowing in the wind, and a vast contingent of soldiers and knights in shining armor crossing the field with the cavalry at the front. Upon arriving, a new cutscene is activated, where you see the enemy approaching dauntlessly from the top of the hill into your direction. At that point, the battle commences.
Grab opponent and along with the other mounted knights, charge at the enemy lines while dodging arrows, bombs or rocks from the air. You then grab your sword and begin to slice opponents walking on the field while riding your way towards a mounted group of opponents. But unlike in other games in the series, the other enemies do not wait in turn, but all at once force you to both attack one opponent while dodging the attacks from the rest of them. Do not make this pointless. They would have to include specific objectives such as taking out enemy captains, mini-bosses, supporting them, and most importantly capturing their banners, thus lowering the morale of your opponent and making it easier to take them out for the remaining forces. Apart from bringing in an engaging and competitive side quest, this game mode could have an impact on the surrounding overworld by turning a peaceful and living feel into a deserted wasteland. A war mode in Zelda Wii U could finally bring in a working online component to the console Zelda games, building upon the battles against Shadow Link from A Link Between Worlds, but at a much larger scale. Nintendo EAD could compromise the demand for an online mode in Zelda U by including it with the proposed war mode in the proper Hyrule battlefield.
Summing it up, a war setting in Zelda Wii U would be a series first, which would definitely mark for a deep precedent, but at the same time, involving premise and storyline for the game. Including a war mode as an expansive side quest in Zelda U would therefore not only build further on the mechanics of Hyrule Warriors, but also be in accordance with series producer Mr. Eiji Uenuma's ambition of fusing elements from several of the most recent releases such as Wind Waker HD, Majora's Mask 3D, and Hyrule Warriors into one great bundle in Zelda U. Under this condition, we might see a mode centering around the war campaign, which could either serve as chapters in the main quest and plot, or just as a more in-depth side quest that would affect the appearance of the overworld and its NPCs, but not the main story of the game. Another factor that will have a great impact is the timeline placement of the game, as it will determine what kind of war we will see, and what kind of impact it will have on the surrounding world. Finally, a war mode could work for an expansion of the brilliant gameplay found in the Zelda series and build upon them, also seen in the desire for an online component in Zelda Wii U. There is, in other words, a ton of unused potential in Hyrule's battlefield.
And that's it, folks. Thank you so much to Zelda Conqueror for helping me with this special episode on the possibility of a war setting in Zelda Wii U. But we still actually need to know more about the wars, as they are probably the greatest mystery in the Zelda series. I'm therefore being joined by McIntyre Productions and again Zelda Conqueror for a complete timeline of the different wars taking place in Hyrule's lengthy, bloody and greedy history. But in terms of the next episode of Zelda Unknown, it might be a few weeks because of that war timeline video. In the meanwhile, I will give you the following alternatives for the next episode. Do you want me to cover a province from the original Legend of Zelda or a potential Sky province? Cast your vote by writing in the comment section below.
Also, do not forget to like and share this video if you're up for some more Zelda content in the future, and subscribe to Commonwealth Realm and me, Zelda Conqueror, as we along this video have done a collaboration on my channel where we expand on Conrad's previous theories to tell the complete story behind the Hyrulean Civil War. The link to the video is on the screen and in the description down below.
Finally, I want to give some special shoutouts to the Deviant artists Tyler Edlin Art, Zalo Hero and Skull the Kid for allowing me to use their incredible Zelda War artwork. Links to their DeviantArt pages and artwork can be found in the description down below.
Until then, this was the Commonwealth Realm
and Zelda Conqueror.